our families. And when you see the presentation here, you will figure out more in detail why everything is connected. Okay. So are we ready for the breakout room, Riley?
Breakout rooms are ready. The only people that we have no idea where to put them are the people on the phone numbers right now. So I'm going to go ahead and start the breakout rooms, and then if we can try to talk to the people on the phones, we can figure out where they can go. Okay, I'm going to start the breakout rooms. Everyone, you'll be sent to a different room depending if you speak English or Spanish.
So, lo que Carlos está diciendo es que las personas que están a través de su número de teléfono, no sabemos a qué idioma mandarlos, ¿ya? Entonces, por eso estamos tratando de ver cómo se hace eso. Pero los grupos ya están armados, los que nos hablamos español nos vamos a ir a un grupo especial, los que hablan inglés se van a quedar aquí en este room. Que no va a haber problema con eso. So, los que hablamos español en su pantalla van a recibir una invitación que dice unirse al grupo. Ustedes tienen que poner ahí en la pantalla aceptar. Y ahí nos vemos todos en el grupo. Okay?
Okay, I'm going to start it right now.
For the people who are on the phone, if you push *6, it will unmute you so that you can tell Carlo which room you want to be in. Does that work, Carlo?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so *6 for people who are on the phone. I think there's just a couple of them. And somebody needs to say that in Spanish because I can't.
Bueno.
Is that you, Joel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was doing route.
That's okay. You're good.
Hi, Carl. This is Pat Green. I'd like to be the English group.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do I do *6? I don't know. I'm out.
Jumana, you don't need to because you're not on a phone.
You're fine.
Oh,
you're
I'm
okay,
sorry.
Jumana. We already figured out your language and everything. Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and mute everyone real quick. Sorry. Okay. All right. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna set up the presentation.
We need to be in the English group. My name is Sabrina Urban, and we.
Okay, go ahead and just stay in this group. This is the English group, the main room. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Only one breakout room for the Spanish speakers.
Okay, I'm gonna mute again. Second. Okay, I'm gonna get the presentation up. Everyone give me just 1 moment, please. Okay.
Real quick before we get started, I know we've been referring to raising your hand. You can either just do this like this, or if you click on reactions on the bottom, when you have all those little icons, you can click on reactions, and then that's where the raise hand feature is, just for future reference.
Okay. So everyone, thank you very much for attending today. I know we did our little icebreaker, but I want to reintroduce myself and Riley real quick. So once again, my name is Carlo. A lot of you met me during orientation last month. I'm the organizing coordinator of the program. Riley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Riley Fagan. I'm the volunteer network coordinator of the program.
Okay.
And it's really good to see you all.
All right, so thank you everyone for attending our very first workshop of the year. Today we're going to be covering soil life or soil biology and watering practices in the garden. So just to go over some agreements when you're using Zoom with us, if you haven't already, please rename yourself with your language in the chat. We would like it so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. So remember, 1 mic on at a time. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself while others are speaking. And what Riley said before, you can do a reaction in order to raise your hand to speak if you do have any questions. We will have a question and answer period right at the end of the presentation where you're going to be able to freely ask any questions you have. And also, if you have anything that can't wait till the end of the presentation, feel free to use the chat box one second. Feel free to use the chat box to say any comments or questions. And then for everyone who's using a phone to call in right now, you can press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And if you want to raise your hand, you do *9. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So today,
Joy, sorry, I see your hand up.
Yes. Hi.
hello, Toy.
My name is Tu Chung. I am Vietnamese. I need to show me how to use the soil life and water practice please the translate Vietnamese because English a little bit understand. All right. If right now can you translate Vietnamese or after that you mail English to me I can understand.
Toy,
Okay.
we will send you a copy of the presentation in English, and we're gonna have Tao follow up with you. That way, they can explain the information a little bit to you. Okay, so try your best to follow along right now, but
Yes.
we will follow up with you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go over the quick agenda of today's topic. So today we're going to be talking about soil life and water practices. So we're going to learn a little bit about the food web and how to preserve the soil life with enriching your soil. And then we're going to go over watering practices, specifically water movement, how water moves through different soils, how to protect and keep moisture in your soil, the difference between hand watering and drip irrigation, and quantity plus periodicity, which equals balance and stability. And like I said earlier, questions and answers and announcements are going to be at the end of this presentation. Okay, we already did the icebreaker. So I'd like everyone to just think for a moment about soil. So often when we're looking at soil, we don't see it as a complex system of organisms, but soil itself is actually a living organism. It's a complex system that contains a diverse range of living organisms and nutrients that are essential for supporting healthy vegetable plants. So soil itself is actually its own ecosystem. If you have a microscope, you can actually see all the different organisms that exist, whether it's fungi, bacteria, arthropods. There's a bunch of different things in soil that make it a living thing. So we're going to go ahead and look at the levels of soil. So this is a map of the food soil web. There are 5 and higher trophic levels, which basically categorizes all the organisms in different levels. So in the first trophic level, you have your plants and organic matter. These are all your photosynthesizers. They're the ones that get the energy from the sun. And then we go to the second trophic level. These are all the decomposers, mutualists, pathogens and parasites and root feeders. So those are nematodes, fungi, and bacteria. The third trophic level is shredders, predators, and grazers, which are arthropods, nematodes, which feed on fungus and bacteria, and protozoa. And then in the fourth trophic level, you have the larger arthropods, nematodes like worms, and then at the very top are birds and other animals. So you can see that soil really is an environment for all these creatures, and they're all interconnected. You can see all the arrows pointing in and out, whether they feed other species or they feed on other species. Soil itself supports this, and it's very important when it comes to just the entire the food web. So I'm going to move on. So soil, one second. Soil and what lives in the soil are in a symbiotic relationship. That is to say that they are part of a community that works for the benefit of each part. So one community could not thrive without the help of another community. You have to think about it like that. All right, so the main reason why we're bringing up this topic of soil as a living thing is because Essentially, to have healthy vegetable plants in your garden, you have to focus on protecting the soil life in your soil by enriching your soil. So there's different ways you can do this. Most of the ways are to provide organic materials, whether it's vegetable scraps, fruit scraps, crushed eggs, anything that helps enrich the soil. A major part of soil is that organic materials that provide a lot of the nutrients. Also, you want to preserve the structure of the soil. Soil has a very delicate structure. It's really easy to throw it off balance, whether you're using chemical pesticides or even just stepping on soil that can actually destroy the structure of the soil and make it harder for your plants to actually grow. And then you have to think about the microorganisms. Are your gardening practices actually protecting these microorganisms? Or are they having them thrive by adding extra nutrients and extra organic material in it? So you have to see it as the more you, the more you encourage life in your soil, the healthier your plants are going to be, because those little microorganisms are what's making it easier for your plants to absorb nutrients. Okay, I'm going to move on. So you may ask, how do you protect your soil and nourish your soil? Well, there's different things you can do. One very easy way is to cover your soil with organic material. So examples of this would be tree leaves, grass clippings without pesticides, straw, and compost. You can see in the picture here, I think this is lettuce. Lettuce, there's a bunch of leaf compost all around it. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more in detail. So the reason why you put leaves on the surface of your soil is, one, to protect it from the sun, because the sun itself can cause accelerated erosion. That means it can degrade the surface of the soil pretty quickly by drying it out and causing it to crack. When it comes to retaining moisture, retaining nutrients and everything, if you put a layer, if you put a layer of protection on top of your soil, it will actually protect your plant's roots and also the ability of the soil to retain its nutrients. With mulch, you'll also prevent evaporation, which will help keep your garden a lot more moist. And then another way you can nourish your soil is to add nutrients from organic matter. So I was talking a little bit about fruit peels, vegetable peels. You can also create biofertilizers with organic material. You can put in wood ash from untreated wood, banana peels as a fruit, egg shells that are crushed, even coffee is really good for the soil. So there's a bunch of things that you can actually get directly from your home for free in order to add more organic material to your garden. Okay, so to run on that again, adding organic material protects and nourishes the communities living in this soil and provides a good environment for insects and worms that work to give structure and nutrients to the soil, as well as for any fungi and bacteria that help your plants digest nutrients in the soil. You create nutritional balance, and that is the key to a healthy garden. You want to balance out all those factors. All right, so this is a little bit more about preserving your soil life and your soil structure. So one major thing that we actually do not think about, because the industrial agriculture system is all about tilling your soil. You see those huge machines actually tilling farmland whenever you're passing through Central Valley or past Morgan Hill or Gilroy. You see these giant machines tilling the soil because they're trying to get rid of weeds or previous crops. But little do people actually know is that tilling the soil is actually destroying the structure of the soil, especially if you're tilling way too much. So if you actually limit the tilling of your soil, tilling only when necessary, say when you're planting new crops, it can actually preserve the structure of the soil, make it so that it better retains nutrients and it better retains moisture. It will actually preserve the soil life and not kill off the soil life, which will help in turn create that balance that we were talking about earlier. So you have to think of it in our gardens. You don't necessarily have to till every season. For me, myself, I only till once a season. That's usually in the beginning of spring. And that's all I really need to keep the soil really loose for the entire year. But try your best not to till when you can. The only times I would suggest tilling is if your soil is way too hard. But other ways to go about that is to put more compost or organic material in your soil, and that really does help loosen up the soil. And then another way that you can add nutrients to the soil, I mentioned making biofertilizer teas. So basically, biofertilizer teas are a really good way of putting nutrients in your soil. It encourages healthy fungi and bacteria growth in your soil, and these are the good fungi and bacteria. So you can make a biofertilizer tea using molasses, milk, yeast, organic material that you would find in the neighborhood or in your yard, like leaves, long clippings, or stuff from the kitchen, like coffee, tea, banana peels, even vegetarian animal manure like horse or rabbit manure. So what you do is you steep all these materials in water in a large bucket overnight, cover it, and then the next day you can actually use that liquid to add nutrients to your soil. And that actually feeds the life of your soil. Okay. This is just to go over. On the right here is a couple of examples of folks making their own biofertilizer tea. You see, it's a little gross looking, but honestly, this is the best way of going about it. You can make it in smaller batches than these people are doing on the right, like in a 5-gallon bucket. But I encourage all of you to actually experiment with it using different materials that you have available. It not only saves you money, but it prevents you from having to go buy fertilizers at your local hardware store or garden store.
Can I interject something right now, please, Carlos?
Yes, feel free.
Please, just really quick. Currently, I'm all into this Jadam organic farming, and it's low-cost farming, and it's exactly what you're talking about. But we have to be careful with the teas and anaerobic and aerobic and knowing the difference between the two. So we just have to, I would love to be part of that focus group when we start talking about making teas, because I've been doing it for probably 10 years now. And I just really feel like I have some knowledge to share about that. So just put a pin in that, and then we can talk about that later in a focus group, okay?
Okay, that sounds good. One second.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off there, Carlos. I'm sorry.
No. So I did make a quick error like earlier in the workshop. We were actually supposed to start off on the food justice workshop. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap up the gardening workshop that I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Sooner than later, and then we'll go over the food justice stuff. So I apologize for the confusion. We were supposed to start on the food justice stuff after before this. So, but that's okay. We'll get through both of the content.
No worries. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get
So,
in.
all right. So I'm going to move on to now water in your garden. So watering is a really important component of your garden, of course. So understanding how water works in your garden allows you to take care and protect your crops. So this little slide is to show you how water actually moves through your soil and through your plants. So there's a certain type of water flow that you have to pay attention to. So when you add water to the soil, it lets your roots absorb them and transports some moisture, including the nutrients in the soil, through the stem, into the leaves, into the fruits. It also helps keep life active in your soil, specifically the bacteria, fungi, worms, and insects. So the plants itself absorb and transpire that water through their leaves. So they exhale it through their leaves, and that goes into the air. So plants have a really unique way of cohabitating with water. It's really essential for their life. Okay. And then I wanted to go quickly over different soil types. I'm not gonna read this all out loud just because it is a lot to go over, but the three main soil types that you want to think about are sandy soil, loamy soil, and clay soil. And for all of you folks that live here in Santa Clara County, you should be very familiar with our soil here. Most of our soil here is very heavy. It would be under the clay soil category. It's very nutrient rich, but it's so heavy during the summer, it becomes really hard and will crack. And it's very hard for actually plant roots to actually grow through that type of soil. If you have our raised garden beds in your yard or are planning on getting them this year, you're gonna get more so loamy soil because we specifically give you this mix called Veggie Mix and Wonder Girl Compost, which is a nice mixture of everything, including some clay, some sand, some other things just to make it really loose. That is actually the ideal type of soil that you want in the garden because it helps retain nutrients, helps retain moisture, but allows for plant roots to actually grow through it really well. And then just to touch on sandy soil a little bit, sandy soil you'd find more in coastal habitats. We're inland, so we don't have to worry about it as much, but most of sandy soil is obviously made out of a high percentage of sand or larger soil particles and contains a lot of rock particles in particular. So sandy soil doesn't have as much nutrients as loamy or clay soil, and water actually travels really quickly through sandy soil. So it is not the best when it comes to growing crops in. So I'm going to move on so I can show you a diagram. So this is a quick diagram of how water actually moves through these different types of soils. There's sandy, loam, and clay. You can see sand has really large particles. They're not packed as tightly compared to loam and clay. And you can see the water is just going right through it in basically a straight line instead of distributing evenly throughout the soil. And then you see clay on the right. There are clay particles, but they're really packed together. It prevents water from really running through. It actually, with clay soil, it's really easy for it to get flooded and inundated water, but it takes a long time for that water to actually go through that soil. So you can see water isn't really going through fast. And then you see the best of both worlds, loam soil. This is the medium between all of them. It's loose enough where water can flow freely through it without going too fast. It's able to retain nutrients really well in this situation, and this is the best type of soil to actually grow your plants. And so the main thing is that every time we add organic material to our soil, the main thing is we're trying to make it into more loamy soil. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that you can preserve moisture in your soil by using mulch. So you can use tree leaves or straw, but the amazing thing about organic mulch, it actually also feeds the life in your soil. Eventually that mulch is going to degrade and eventually become soil and enrich it, feeding the worms, all the little bugs that are beneficial for your garden. So there's different types of mulches that you can use, but I always advocate to use organic mulches. All right, so we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty details about hand watering and drip irrigation. So there's two different ways you can go about watering your garden. Some of you are having drip irrigation installed in your beds this year, but we also encourage everyone to try their hand at hand watering as well. And I'll give you the reasons why you want to experiment with both. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons. So for hand watering, some of the pros is that you get to spend a little bit more time with your plants. You're able to check on them, check if there's any insect problems, any diseases. You can also differentiate irrigation by the type of plants. Some plants actually require more water than others. Some don't need as much water at all. So you're able to prescribe certain amounts of water to each plant. And also with hand watering, you're able to water all the areas. There's no issues when it comes to not watering evenly enough because you are going one by one to each plant and giving them the right amount of water. Some of the cons is that there's no quantity control. You're really guessing when it comes to giving them the amount of water. In this presentation, we're measuring water by inches, but when you're hand watering, it's really easy to overwater. Also, when you're hand watering, it increases chances of you. Oh, we mute Gloria, please. Okay, thank you. When you're hand watering, oftentimes you're going to wet the leaves and stems. And the main thing about not wetting your plants too much is it actually, if you wet them too much, you actually increase the chances of diseases and fungus. So the best way to actually water them is to go below the stems and leaves and water at the ground level if you can, directly where the roots are. I see that you raised your hand, Sudha. Do you have a question?
Yes, Carlo, like that is a follow-up question with the mulch. So the thing is like it's going to degrade into soil and like later it's going to degrade for sure.
Yes.
Because I saw a layer of like a white moldy thing on top of the mulch. Like, I'm not sure whether it's good or bad.
So that's just the mulch degrading. So it just depends on what type of mulch that you're using. Usually with leaf mulch, it degrades really fast. So are you talking about that photo that was in the previous part of the slide here?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Before that, like, yeah, it's like, decomposing mulch feeds the life in the soil. So what do I need to do? Like, can I put like, what is it, like more soil on top of the mulch and then it's going to start degrade, or how it's going to be?
Either way, if you put soil on top or just leave the mulch on top of the soil, it's going to degrade regardless. The worms and insects are going to start degrading the leaves, the mulch. Also, the sun and your watering will also help it degrade. So
because I read like, maybe like a couple of years ago that we need to take out the like, old mulch and like we have to like renew with the new mulch sort of thing. Like, is it a like myth or something?
No, it's not a myth. The main mulches that you're talking about are the ones that are little like semi-permanent mulches, like wood chips, larger wood chips especially. Those are the types of mulches that you may have to actually remove after a while, just depending on the situation. But most mulches, especially organic mulches, are going to degrade over time. It's just those heavier mulches like wood chips, they take a longer amount of time because they are heavier materials, they're more dense. So it's harder for the decomposers like the insects, bacteria, fungi, and all that to actually break down those heavier mulches.
Thank you, Carlo.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue on the hand watering cons. So I mentioned the wet leaves and stems and how wetting leaves and stems can actually encourage fungus and bacterial diseases. Also, with hand watering, the soil can flood if you're overwatering in certain parts. And it really, like I said earlier, depends on your type of soil that you have. If you have clay soil, the likelihood of that area flooding is a lot higher when you're hand watering. And with hand watering, if you're watering a little bit too much, it actually causes the nutrients to actually drain out of your soil faster. That's especially the case if you're doing container gardening. You'll notice that if you water a lot in containers, a lot of the nutrients are going to flow directly out of those little holes in the bottom of the container, and you're going to have to more often add more organic material to make up for those nutrients draining. So that's a little bit about hand watering. Now we can talk about drip irrigation. So our program actually encourages to use drip irrigation in your gardens. One is really convenient, and also since we give you the materials, it's a very easy way of making it less labor intensive for you to actually water your garden. But there are definitely some pros and cons when it comes to it. So some pros is that it minimizes runoff, meaning that you know how you water, especially water by hand, sometimes it'll get flooded and your water will actually run off to the side. gravity is going to take that water and put it into the least high place. And so when you're doing drip irrigation and doing it slowly, it gives the water more time to actually absorb into the soil without causing water runoff. Also, it minimizes evaporation during application. Since you're doing a little bit of water over time, you're not getting as much evaporation when it comes to the sun. And the great thing about drip irrigation, it applies the water directly at the root zone. So you're not wetting the leaves or the stems. You're reducing the amount of diseases that your plants can actually grow by watering directly at the root zone. And honestly, the biggest plus about drip irrigation is saving water. You can really just leave your water on from 10 to 30 minutes, and usually that's enough to provide enough water for your garden. We're in California and there's droughts every other year, sometimes years back to back. And there's always the question on how much water you're going to be giving your garden to be successful, and how much may be too much water to give your garden. And the great thing about drip irrigation is that it saves water in the long run compared to hand watering. So I'm going to go into the cons of drip irrigation. So, just like with any system, there's possibilities of getting leaks in your system. We try our best when we're installing your drip irrigation to watch for those leaks and repair them as soon as possible. But if you guys ever have problems with leaking in your system, feel free to contact any of the staff and we'll figure out a way to help repair it for you. But yeah, that is one of the biggest cons about drip irrigation. Also, with drip irrigation, it's very specific on where it's actually dripping. So where your lines are is where your plants are going to water, where the emitters are is where the water is going to go. There are often times, unlike hand watering, where there'll be unwatered areas in your garden that are going to be drier than most because the drip irrigation isn't right above that area. So that's one issue with drip irrigation. And I will admit, this next problem, forgetting to turn off the water when you're doing drip irrigation, has happened to me. One day when I was in a rush and I turned on the irrigation, I forgot to turn it off for the night. I was watering right before sunset, and the next morning my soil was completely soaked. It was flooding around the garden beds. But basically, if you're not using a timer, sometimes it's easy to forget to turn off the water, and inadvertently you're going to end up using more, if not the same amount of water if you were hand watering, if you forget to turn off your water source. And then another thing about the tubing is that you can actually have blockage of your tubing eventually, just from using especially hard water. If you have hard water in your area, the salts can actually clog up your hoses, and just maintaining them over the years. So what I like to always encourage at the beginning of every season is to get a wet rag with hot or lukewarm water and literally wipe down your irrigation hoses. That way, especially concentrating where the the emitter parts are, where the holes are, where the water drips out, because that's where you're going to get the most blockage, whether from soil or from minerals in the water. And so this is my honest advice when it comes to irrigation systems. When you are first starting off and you just freshly planted your plants, I suggest doing hand watering first. At least hand watering for the first 2 weeks until your plants actually get established and have the ability to have stronger roots, absorb more water and nutrients, and would be more resilient before the summer hits. So hand water first. You can spend time actually observing your plants, getting used to the amount of water plants like. And then during the summer or during days where you're in a rush and can only spend a little bit of time in the garden, you can use drip irrigation to help relieve some of that stress. Just make sure you turn it off or get a timer for your drip irrigation. But drip irrigation is really useful. It's great technology. It makes it easier, especially for people who have a hard time moving around their garden, whether you're elderly or disabled. Drip irrigation really helps cut out a lot of the time that you actually spend in the garden. But I always encourage hand water. That way you feel a little bit closer to your garden. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, so these are some direct tips on how to promote stability and balance in your garden. So specific quantity and periodicity. So you have to think about it like this. Most vegetables need at least 1 inch of water per week. Some even more so than that. They require less water during cool weather and more during hot weather. And it's best to water actually deeply instead of frequently and with only a little bit of water. Infrequently, about 2 days per week, 2 to 3 days a week in cool weather, or every other day in hot weather, for example, during the summer months. If you are hand watering, like I mentioned before, you have to water directly at the base of the plant, about 10 to 30 seconds per plant, while avoiding to get the leaves, flowers, and fruits wet. And then with drip irrigation, you can leave it up to 20 to 30 minutes. You can even leave it a little bit longer than that if you want, if it's hot. Just make sure that you're checking the soil before you overwater it. So one tip I always give to new gardeners is to test out their soil using their finger. So what you do is you take your finger, go to several spots in your garden, dig with your finger about an inch or two into the soil. If it feels moist, usually that means that your garden doesn't need as much water that day. And you can either skip that day or only water a little bit that day. If it's dry, if it feels, when it feels dry and crumbly and not really, retaining any of that moisture, then that's a sign that you need to actually water a little bit more. But always do the finger test when you're right before you start watering in your garden, just so that you can figure out and see like how often you actually have to really water. You don't necessarily have to water every day. It's just you have to monitor the moisture every single time you're out in the garden and considering to water. So that's a little tip that has helped me become a successful gardener. Just because I used to water every single day, but honestly, that's a waste of water in the long run. And you're not as connected with your garden if you're not constantly checking the soil moisture. Okay. So I'm gonna open. Actually, this part we're gonna do as a group. So I'm gonna open it up for any questions that people may have at the moment. Any parts of the presentation they want clarification on. Anything else on this topic that people want to ask about? Yes, Sudha?
So the thing is, like, in my backyard, like every year, do we need to top off the soil, or like, how it's going to be, Carlo?
Before every season that you plan on growing vegetables, you should always add at least some kind of organic material to your soil. That will keep your soil high in nutrients and it will keep the soil actually loose. Because one thing you want to avoid is not putting those nutrients in. It's actually going to cause your soil to degrade. You're going to not have as many nutrients. The soil is going to get harder. It's going to compact a lot. And then every year after that, you're really going to see a decline when it comes to actually growing those vegetables. So with soil, like I was mentioning earlier, you want to add that organic material in order to feed the life in the soil, keep the soil structure intact, and make it easier for your plants to actually grow.
So how about like earthworms? Because the thing is, like, my previous owner, like before us, like the owners, they might add like some of the earthworms, because every now and then, like whenever like, I just dig in the my backyard, like, I saw like so many earthworms. So do we need to add earthworms for more, like, because I heard from my friend, like they just bought like maybe like 2,000 or 3,000 earthworms. They just like, put it in their backyard, and like overnight they got spread, and like they are like super duper rich in soil.
So that's a really good question, actually. So I'm going to say this. Worms are the best tillers in the garden. The great thing about them is that when they go through the soil, they provide a lot of air to the soil. They leave a lot of nutrients in the soil. And honestly, they're the better gardeners compared to us, because they're the ones that are really supporting life in the soil. And in terms of earthworms, you know, you're always going to have at least some type of earthworm in your garden, especially if you have an in-ground bed. I know, Sudha, you have an in-ground bed at the moment, so you're
Yes.
probably getting the wild earthworms that are actually in your garden. And if you have those, technically, you really do not need to add any other additional earthworms to it. I think the earthworms that you may be thinking of that your friend put into the garden are the red wiggler worms, and those are specifically used for worm composting. So people will have like bins, larger worm bins, where they put their refuse in, specifically any of their organic refuse, and the worms end up turning it into what people like to call worm compost or black gold, and they end up putting that into the garden. I wouldn't encourage using those specific type of worms in the garden. I like actually putting them into the garden, because one, they're going to scatter. They're not necessarily going to stay in your garden. And also they have very specific requirements when it comes to surviving. And you know, they don't act the same way as the natural earthworms that you have in your garden. They like to stay at the surface under, say, a lot of leaf litter and a lot of organic material on the surface. They're not going to be the type of worms that dig deep into your soil and till it. So what I would say is that focus more so on adding organic material to your garden rather than adding extra worms into your garden. And honestly, you know, organic material is really cheap if you get it from the store or if you source it from a local farm, especially when it comes to vegetarian animal manures such as rabbit or horse manure. It's going to do wonders when it comes to putting nutrients into your soil and encouraging those earthworms. Okay. So
Whatever I have is the white, like, you know, I didn't see like much of like that red wiggler ones, but I saw is like, you know, the white ones.
I'm not sure which white ones you're talking about. If you can, you know, I'll take
a picture and I'm going to send it to you. Thank you, Carlo.
Perfect. Yes, let's do that, and then we'll figure out what we're looking at. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna move on. There's at least 3 other people that are raising their hand at the moment. Marcia, do you want to go first?
Sure. I just wanted to know about the putting eggshells and coffee grounds and things. Can they go directly into the soil, or is it better to just use a tea and not put the actual items into the soil?
Honestly, it's just your preferences. What I like to do if I'm going to put any kitchen scraps into the soil is I like to dig a hole and then put the scraps in and then bury it. The main thing you don't want to do is attract like rodents and other animals to your garden. If you bury it in your soil, there's less likelihood that they're actually going to go into your garden. So eggshells, crush them really well. You can actually sprinkle eggshells on top. That's completely fine. Coffee grounds, you can do the same as well, but you can definitely just dig it into your soil. Just the first 2 to 3 inches into your soil should be fine.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Rosa, do you want to go next? Rosa Cardenas? Okay, I don't think she can hear me. All right, Joel, you have the question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I've found a lot of times that seems like with living here for all my life with the clay soil, that perlite seems like good stuff, and vermiculite, both combined, seems to be really helpful to get the soil to be able to accept moisture. And it seems to be really good to keep it supported and have a structure and not smash down into just a lump of clay. But also, it seems like if you put too much, it can screw it up and make it drain too fast. And it seems like the vermiculite tends to go up to the surface. It's really light and it tends to float when it gets flooded and comes out of the soil, ends up on the top. And I wonder, is that good to use, and how much should you use, and how deep should you put it, and all that? How should you use those if you use those?
So if you're gonna be using soil amendments, kind of a perlite and vermiculite, those are all great to loosen up your soil. But obviously, if you use too much, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, if you use too much of it, of course, it's going to encourage your water to act more like sandy soil, where the water is just going to flow through it without retaining that moisture. So the best bet I would like to tell you is if you put the vermiculite and perlite into your soil, put some of that mixed soil in your hand and then press it together. If it all sticks together, but it's just a little bit crumbly, usually that's the best amount of vermiculite or perlite in your soil. But if it just falls apart, doesn't really stick together, that usually means that you've put way too much in your soil. And then if you push it in a ball and it just sticks together without being crumbled, that means that there's too much clay in your soil, and then you're going to have to add more of those amendments. So that's just one way. You have to really feel for it. You can't visually see it. But that's how I at least do it, especially when I'm making container soil, is I do the squeeze test to see if it will be crumbly, if it sticks together, or if it's like right in the middle.
Oh, thank you. That's really good.
Yeah.
And then I guess, should you worry about how deep it goes in the soil, or is it just on the surface?
Honestly, if you focus on the first 6 to 12 inches of the soil, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to dig it too deep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Joe. All right. Dale, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a comment about using table scraps. Be very careful not to use meat scraps.
Exactly.
They contain pathogens, and they draw nasty insects and animals.
Especially animals. You don't want rats, raccoons, and stuff digging in your garden. Don't use any meat scraps. Don't even use bread. Bread is one that people forget. Rodents love bread in your garden. So specifically stick to vegetable and fruit scraps if you can. Okay, thank you, Dale.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. Maria Luisa, do you have a question?
Hi, can you hear me, Carlo?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Luisa, and I had a question following up after the person who was talking about worms. And I know you said if we have an in-ground garden, we shouldn't worry about that because we would normally have earthworms. But what about if it's a raised bed and we add in our organic compost like normal? Should we then try to add in our own earthworms that we find, or?
So that's a good question, actually. I have one question for you for your raised bed. Did you put a permanent barrier under your bed before installing it, or was it directly on the soil?
I believe it was directly on the soil.
So the great thing about having it directly on your soil is those earthworms will actually migrate up into your bed soil. So you don't have to worry about adding extra worms to that bed. The worms will naturally be attracted to all the organic material in your raised bed. So it's a good thing that you didn't put a barrier in, because you get free worms in your garden.
Got it. Okay. And then just additionally, when you go into grocery stores, not grocery stores, like garden stores, and they have like praying mantis eggs and ladybugs. What are your thoughts on those? Is that something we should add in additionally? Like, I know I have some already in my garden, but
so personally for me, just to let you know, we will have a integrated pest management workshop later in the year that will actually talk about biological control of insects. But for me, I do like using predator insects in the garden, specifically ladybugs, because I always have problems with aphids in my garden. So I really love using ladybugs in my garden. It really helps control those populations. In terms of praying mantises, I personally would not really recommend them because they're non-discriminatory when it comes to eating other insects. They will eat both beneficial and harmful insects, but ladybugs specifically only eat the harmful insects. So those are my opinion on just those two. There's a lot of other predator insects that can use for pest control in the garden, but ladybugs are definitely my favorite.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Rosa, I did see that you had your hand up earlier. Did you still have a question?
Yes, I didn't unmute myself, but anyway, so
Yeah,
can
go
you
ahead.
hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have a question about, the vegetable leftovers, that you want to save for the garden. I thought I tried doing it before, putting them in a container, but the problem is that I get a lot of little bugs, flying around, and then it kind of gets disgusting, and so I just said, forget it. I don't want to save them because then I have a lot of bugs in the kitchen. But what's the best way to save the scraps to use in the garden, as a compost?
That is a very good question, actually. I've run into the same problem of keeping vegetable and fruit scraps too long in my kitchen and running into those problems with fruit flies and other insects on the scraps. So the main thing, it's more so about compost hygiene when it comes to keeping those scraps. So the main thing you have to think about is whether or not you're using vegetable or fruit scraps, you will get more insects in those scraps if you use fruit, because a lot of times, unknowingly to you, there are actually fruit fly eggs in your fruit scraps. So one thing I like doing is only using vegetable scraps in my garden. You can definitely use fruit scraps, it's completely fine, but you will have more likelihood of getting like fruit flies and other insects in your compost. And then in terms of keeping those scraps in your kitchen, ideally, what you are going to do is save those scraps and immediately put it into your garden, or putting it at the end of the day. You never want to keep those scraps longer than a day because that encourages insects to be attracted to them.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the best way of going about it. If you really want it so that there's not as many insects, which is what I personally do, just stick to the vegetable scraps. That should be completely fine.
Like potato peels and
potatoes are fine, carrot peels, celery parts, all that stuff. Eggshells are completely fine too.
Yeah. One more question. Last year, for the first time, I tried growing tomatoes, on my own, just experiencing. So I planted them in a big pot, and so yeah, they bore the fruit, and it was great and all that. But I still have some of the sort of dry stems, and they grew very, very tall. So if I remove all those and use the same soil for another plants this coming summer, will the soil still have nutrients and be good to grow vegetables, or it's not good anymore, or the soil
That is a good
can
question.
be mixed with another type of soil? What do I do with them?
So this is how I go about it, especially for container gardens. So every time you use soil for a season, especially with crops like tomatoes, corn, any of those heavy feeders, tomatoes would be considered a heavy feeder. It takes a lot of nitrogen out of the soil. So if you are going to reuse that soil for another container or another plant for that season, what I would do is add a lot of organic compost into the soil. I personally I add organic compost, but I also look for an organic fertilizer, like a granulated organic fertilizer from the store, and mix that in just for good measure. But if you're just adding extra organic material into the soil, that should make it suitable enough to grow other vegetable plants. Also, some gardeners will also choose just to put that used soil directly into their garden beds. That's completely fine too. I've done that before. But if I want to retain that container soil and use it season after season, you have to make sure that you put extra nutrients into it, or else the plants in the next season are definitely not going to do as well. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. All right, so that was the last of those questions. So we are running a little bit late on time. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next presentation, the one that we were actually supposed to do earlier. We're going to be doing the food justice portion of our workshop. So give me one second. I'm going to bring it up.
And I'm going to send a survey link. This will be your evaluation of that section of the workshop. So I'm going to send it right now. If you want to, while we're switching over presentations, fill out this survey, take a quick stretch, walk around, anything you need to do while we get set up.
We're going to give you guys about 5 minutes to fill out the survey, and then I'm going to start up the presentation, okay?
Yeah, and also we're going to do, I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm gonna share a little bit about the upcoming installations and build committee. Later, when we're all back together, there are questions on this survey about if you're interested in doing installations. So I know I haven't explained it yet, but even if you're a little bit interested, please just click yes so I can be sure to follow up with you. And then I'll explain that later once we're all back in the same room.
Okay, so Riley did post a link in the chat. If you guys have access to a computer right now to fill it out, or even on your phone, click on the link, it'll bring you to the survey. We will start the food justice presentation at 10:54, okay?
Awesome. I'm also gonna take a bathroom break.
Yeah, go ahead, take a bio break if you guys want right now too, if you've already finished your survey.
Can I do my survey by phone?
I'm actually not completely sure if you can, Joel. You may be able to by clicking that link. What we'll do is we'll also send these links via email to everyone afterwards in case they don't have time to fill it out right now. So yeah, we'll go ahead and do that after this meeting.
Oh, okay, you got my email.
Yes, I think we have everyone's email on here.
What? I wonder if you guys don't have my new smartphone number.
I just saved it on my phone, Joel. I did get your text earlier. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions on the survey as well, feel free to ask me.
Hi, Carlos. I can't find it. Where is the survey?
Okay, one second. Let me repost it again.
Am I in the wrong? In the chat room here?
Yeah, I'm going to put it back into the chat. One second. It may have been pushed up.
Okay.
Okay. I posted it again. It should be the first one that you see.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone who's already filled it out.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Hey, Carlos,
yes.
Can you put me on the list of people that want to volunteer to do the installations?
Okay, we'll have Riley note that down. She'll make sure to contact you about the installations next week, okay?
Cool.
Thank you, Joel.
Yay, thank you, Joel.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes to finish up the survey. If you guys haven't already, take time to fill that out. We will be beginning the food justice portion of the workshop soon. I'm gonna mute everyone. Sorry, one second. Riley, you may have to unmute.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Roxy. Oh, I wanted to just give a moment for everyone to say hi to a friend of mine. Her name is Roxy. She's a guest in this meeting today. She's actually trying to get her son to volunteer with us, and she wanted to check out our workshops to see how it goes. So everyone say hi to Roxy. Everyone say hi. Welcome, Roxy.
Hi, Roxy.
So yeah, so Roxy's, this is the first time Roxy is attending one of our meetings.
Go, Roxy, go.
Okay, 1 more minute, everyone. Oh, Roxy says, hello, everyone. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Best way to start off the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, Miriam?
Installation February Wednesday, the workshop or the meeting that you're gonna have for showing us what it's going to be in the afternoon, or what is the time that on February 24th, and what is the time?
It'll be at 4 p.m. And so that is our in-person build lead training at Sabrina's house. Sabrina, one of our first year members, is so kind to offer up her yard for that training. So if you are interested in attending that, oh yeah, sorry, I guess I didn't put the time on there, but it's at 4 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, everyone. It is 10:54 right now, so I'm going to go ahead and start it on the food system workshop. Give me one moment. Hopefully everyone had a chance to fill out that survey. All right. So once again, I want to reiterate, I don't want this to be a lecturing part of the workshop. Food systems is basically what we go over with every first year gardener, because one thing about La Mesa Verde is that we want to also not only garden and learn how to garden, but also observe our current food system, how it works, our role within it as gardeners, as well as the power that we may have in order to influence the food system. And so if you guys do have any questions, any comments to make during this, feel free to raise your hand. We will stop and answer them to the best of our ability. Or if you have just a comment of what you've observed in the food system, feel free to put that in. There will be a discussion part towards the end of it as well. That way we can just talk a little bit and just learn a little bit from each other as well. Okay, so today's Food Justice Workshop is on food systems. How does it work and what is our role? So this is just a basic diagram of our current industrial food system. First, it starts off with production. That includes farmers growing the crops. Then that food goes to processing to develop into different products that are packaged at the store. Then it goes to distribution, such as markets, and then you go to consumers after that. This includes schools, grocery stores, hospitals, restaurants. We would be included in that category as well as food consumers. And then food waste management, which is right at the end, that processes all the waste of the food system. And so, you know, it's a little different compared to years ago before the industrial food system developed into a complex machine such as this. You know, it's a really good machine. It all works well. All of them play their different parts, but it's very different compared to how back in the day, farmers were the main producers, especially small farmers. They would bring their extra crops into smaller markets in their area and sell it directly to the consumer. Now there are all these extra steps when it comes to food production, especially here in America. You know, we've kind of lost touch on the basics of the food system when it comes to growing our own food, sharing or selling our food to our neighbors, family, friends. You know, it's very different. Similar systems, but definitely the current food system, the industrial food system, works in this circle over and over again. So I'm going to move on. So we talked about production, processing, distribution, consumption, and waste. So the definition of the food system is the way that food gets into your plate. As you saw before, it is often complicated, but the food system includes production, processing, distribution, marketing, consumption, and disposal. I said earlier that, you know, they're all important parts of the food system. One could not exist without the other. And so we need to keep that in mind when it comes to our place as gardeners in the system. So we're going to talk about the players in the food system. So we talked about the 5 parts of the food system and how they're important when it comes to food distribution, production and distribution. And I want to just talk about the different roles people play in each part. So I'm going to start with production first. So the main role players in production are the industrial and factory farmers, small time farmers, and low wage workers. In processing, they're usually responsible for the global food corporations and low wage workers as well. With distribution, the main people working with distribution are advertisers and the media, truckers who actually distribute the food to different centers, and again, low wage workers. And then consumption, you're thinking about the major grocery chains, fast food chains, individual consumers and gardeners just like us who go to the store and buy food, and again, low wage workers. And then you go all the way at the end with landfill companies at waste management. And again, you'll see in this part too, you know, there are low wage workers in this field as well. So the main thing I want to focus on this is that in every single part, there are low wage workers in the system. And often they are the most disenfranchised. They're the ones with the least power in the system. And they're the ones that don't directly benefit from that system. The players of the system that benefit are the larger farmers, the global food corporations, advertisers and media, and the grocery chains. And you know, that's the unfortunate truth. But we will go a little bit more into power dynamics in this system. So this is the part I'm going to that I'm going to ask all of you to participate in. I don't know if you can do this on your phone, but I know if you're on a computer, it allows you to annotate, meaning that you're able to put marks on this this image here. So the main thing that none of the cycle addresses is that there are specific policymakers or lawmakers that directly influence the food system. And there are different parts of the system that have a certain amount of power when it comes to influencing these policymakers, right? So you can see on top here, you can see us as gardeners, us as consumers, as well as our influence when it comes to social media, right? On the right here, you can see a farmer with his tool and his harvest. On the bottom right, you can see the truckers and other low-wage workers. On the left, you can see industrial factories or food processors. And then the top left is larger corporations and restaurants like Walmart or McDonald's. So what I want everyone to do, we're going to take a couple of minutes, probably the next 4 to 5 minutes doing this. If you look at your Zoom bar, whether it's on the top or the bottom, there is a little pencil icon that says annotate. You can click on that, and then you can click on, let me see, on stamp, which is a check mark sign. And then you can click on any of these. I would suggest either like the star, like probably the star symbol. And what you can do is click and put a star directly where you think one area has more power than the other. So I'm going to say, let me see. For me, I'm going to say that that larger corporations like grocery stores and restaurants have more power. So I'm going to put it where Walmart and McDonald's is. So that's okay. You can do an X too. That's completely fine. You guys can do whatever stamp you want. So take a moment right now. Who here actually has the most power? Go ahead and put a stamp there, and then we'll revisit it in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Can you tell us where to find the stamp again?
So if you go into your Zoom bar, I think for you guys, it's going to be in the bottom of your page. You're going to go to annotate, which is a pencil symbol. And then it's going to bring up another menu where you can see stamp, which is a stamp.
I don't even have that menu, so I don't have it.
Are you currently on the phone or are you on the computer?
I'm in a computer. I only have mute, start video, participants, chat, share screen, record, and reactions.
Okay, all right. Well,
So, Carlo?
I'll go ahead and put the stamp for you. So which one of these categories do you say probably has the most power?
Carlo? I just want to say that I found it at the top of the screen in the menu view options.
On view options? Okay. Could you look in the view options and see if you can find the annotate option?
View options under all the percentages. Yeah. It says annotate.
Oh, yes, I found it there.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're going to do it one more minute. Ooh, everyone's circling the policymakers. Okay.
Okay, and it looks like on the phone you can use the pen but no stamp, so that works too, as long as we're...
Yeah, so long as you're able to mark it.
Arrow, there's an arrow too.
Who has the most power? Consumers do.
That's a good question. So we'll discuss that actually. One more minute, everyone. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and stop for now. So let's go ahead and look at what we have. So the ones that were picked, obviously, were the policymakers. Those are the ones that actually have the most influence. But when it comes to the other people in the system that have influence, we have a lot of people who circled corporations like Walmart and McDonald's. We had some people, actually a lot of people, circle the consumer has a lot of the power. We had 2 people do the farmers have the power, and then we had 1, the industrial factories have the power. And it looks like no one picked the low-wage workers and the truck drivers, which is honestly really accurate. Thank you guys for listening. I mentioned that earlier. Okay, so I'd like to open up the discussion now to anyone who wants to talk. So looking at what we know about power in the system, why do you particularly feel like only certain people have power in this system? Anyone want to explain why they chose the consumer, farmer, or any of the corporations? Anyone can jump in right now.
In the chat, Nicole said whoever has the most money has the most power.
That's very true. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But yeah, definitely money has a lot of influence in lobbying, especially when it comes to lobbying with policymakers. So, you know, unfortunately, money really makes the world go round when it comes to the food system. And that has the biggest influence when it comes to, you know, changing things within the food system. And honestly, you can feel very powerless as a consumer. You know, you have a certain amount of power, but when you compare your power compared to, say, a larger corporation, have been doing this for years, has the lawyers, has the manpower to influence policy change, it can be a little intimidating, you know? Does anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah.
Yes, Joe.
Yeah. Oh, when I lived in Brentwood, you could see the big agribusinesses. There were a couple of them in town that came in and started growing, and they just kept growing and taking over land. There was a None Better farm moved in to where there were a bunch of family farms, and the entire whole area, the size of a whole town, it became taken over by None Better, and all those farms went under. So you can see how the big agri corporations have huge power and have, since the 1800s, I guess, had huge power to put the farmers over.
That's a good point.
They would just ending up getting not really enough money for their land, or they just lose their whole farm because they would take all their water away from them. That was the other thing.
There's a lot of ways where corporations, especially larger food corporation, have really damaged the environment, harmed local economies, you know. So, you know, there's a lot of things to say about their impact when it comes to the food system, and, you know, it's very far ranging. We don't necessarily see it up front, but this has been happening ever since the industrial food system was developed. So anyway,
Can't help
thing
but,
about
oh,
they
I'm sorry.
didn't mean to butt in, but the counties will like. I mean, the people getting the property taxes will like it that the bigger agriculture companies are there because they can afford to make enough money. They can make enough money with all their technology to be able to afford the land and not have the land have to be really cheap and the taxes have to be really low for there to be farms there.
Yeah, and like it was said earlier, they're the ones that are going to have the most money. They're the ones that are going to be able to influence the laws when it comes to land access, regulations in the area. It's scary how much power they actually have. Did anyone else have anything to say?
Yes.
Yes, Dale.
I can't help but think about what happened, what was in the 30s, where they had the Dust Bowl. And that was basically caused by over farming in a hot season, and it just created an ecological disaster. And something like that could happen today if you have farmers who don't replenish the soil structure and deplete the soil to the point where it just runs off, it blows away. These things are really important for the people who.
Sorry, Dale. It's a little bit hard to hear you right now. You sounded very muffled.
Sorry. So we need, more programs like La Mesa Verde, for example, to bring these type of issues to the forefront, because a lot of people don't know, the harmful farming practices, which have actually improved. But when you talk in macro farming, it can blow up in your face. You get a bad insect infestation, you have to throw a bunch of they throw a bunch of chemical insecticides on it. That runs off into the groundwater, into the streams, into the lakes. It causes all kinds of ecological damage. And they know all this stuff, but they just don't want to do anything about it because money talks,
And, I want to bring it back. These corporations have a huge influence when it comes to the environmental regulations and laws. They're constantly fighting back these regulations that are supposed to protect our neighborhoods, our environment. They want to be able to make what they make and make as much profit as possible, at the expense of the people, of the environment, of the animals, if they're into meat production. You have to think about it like that. They have a lot of power, too much power, if you ask me. Anyone else have something to say? Yes, Luis.
So I think that this is where organizations like La Mesa Verde and all of us have the potential to take back our power. I mean, I really see this as a beautiful thing, that if we grow our own vegetables and some of our fruit and share those with our families, our friends, our neighbors, and so forth, and really proliferate the education of the power of one's own gardening, one's own cultivation of food, it can have a huge influence, because for every hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to grow their own lettuce, for example, or their own strawberries or whatever, that's going to be less purchases at those big companies, like the Safeway, the Walmart. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, the power is to the people. I mean, we are the ones who drive and influence policy by our choices. So it's our choice. It's a hard choice sometimes, because we're pretty addicted, a lot of us, I speak for myself, addicted on going to the grocery store to get my food. And I just think, as we become more and more independent and share that independence with others, I think it's going to be like maybe eventually that all the check marks and the stars in the middle will end up moving to the top to the people.
It's a really good point, Louise. And, you know, I
not.
do
Guess
want to, you're really getting it. You know, we have a lot of power when it comes to the choices we make on the things that we purchase. You know, inadvertently, our purchase funds these larger corporations and their ability to impact the policymakers and lobby towards the policymakers for, you know, regulations and laws that benefit them directly. And so we have to think about that. We're already playing a part as gardeners, as consumers in this system, even if we don't really think about it to a day-to-day basis, even as simply just shopping at your grocery store. You know, you're encouraging these specific corporations to influence the food system in a certain way. And that's not saying that it's a bad thing. You know, we're consumers. Not necessarily everyone can grow every single type of food that they want in their lifetime. Ideally, you know, it's very convenient to rely on these corporations for our food. But the main thing that La Mesa Verde does is we're encouraging people to grow their own food, to close those gaps in the food system, and really regain their power when it comes to their health and the food that they have access to. So you have to think about that. And, you know, I want to go on to the next slide because I think, Louise, you had a really good touch on reclaiming your power as a consumer. And I wanted to go over the ways that we can actually influence these policymakers as gardeners and as consumers. Oh, how do I remove all this annotate stuff? Let's do clear. No. I don't even know how to do that. 1 second. Oh, there you go. Got it. All right. So how do you influence these policymakers? So as a definition, power, or the capacity to have influence over power, is the capacity to have influence over other persons, organizations, institutions that make decisions. And there's quite a bit of things that we can do as individuals and even as a group as La Mesa Verde to influence these policymakers. So are people putting more annotates up on here? Okay, that's fine. All right, so you'll see on the top left, one thing you can do is donate to specific causes, whether it's organizations that work on policy work, especially food system and food system access issues, to do the lobbying and do the policy work that you want to be done. Another way, right to the right, is to just vote. There are certain politicians that encourage big business to do what they want. And so, you know, it's our job to hold them accountable and pick the politicians that are going to vote the way where we want. And that's to prioritize people over profit and prioritize the environment over profit as well. So voting is a huge part of it. All the way to the top right, you can see this hand and it's a tree. So solidarity with other food justice groups. You know, we are just one food justice group in this area. There's a bunch of other organizations, nonprofits, that are constantly working on food access issues. And, you know, we have strength when we are all together, when we're all advocating for certain things in our community, when we're all taking responsibility for what is going on in our community. That is a lot of power to have allies and to show solidarity with each other. Okay, on the bottom left, you can see that there's other ways you can actually advocate for policy change. One way I love doing it is actually calling out certain organizations or people on social media, online, through videos, YouTube, you know, just really putting your voice out there, putting your opinion out there, and really bringing attention to these issues. You know, these policymakers are supposed to do their job. And if they're not doing a good job, we as the public have the responsibility of holding them accountable, and there's a lot of power in doing that. Specifically, I don't know if this really applies to us as consumers and as gardeners, but giving money for lobbying is a huge part here. And just on the bottom right, just being part of a larger movement can really increase your power as a consumer, as a gardener. We're always trying to improve this community. We're always trying to look out for other neighbors or friends or family. And what is more unifying than trying to achieve the goal of a healthier, like a healthier lifestyle, better food access, better land access. These are all things that we can advocate for. We just, need to learn from each other, be brave enough to speak out about it, share those experiences, and just support each other during this entire process. So that can actually give you a lot of power as an individual as well. So, so I think this is the last slide. Does anyone have any questions about the food system and also the power dynamics in the food system? I'm going to open up the floor for anyone to say any comments or any questions.
Just one thing is the consumer vote, what you don't buy, hugely influential. I think it's hugely influential. Can't talk. Influential.
You got it. We understand.
Then, because I heard that the grape boycott from Cesar Chavez and all that really did dig into the grape industry and really make them change things. And then, let's see, the other one, the sugar thing, people deciding sugar wasn't good for you almost put C&H sugar out of business.
Those are really great examples, actually, Joel. We have a history here in California during the workers' rights movement, specifically farm workers' rights, of people coming together and really pushing their power on all these policymakers, even just on society, to give these rights to these workers, improve working conditions, and they did that by unifying, showing solidarity with each other, and, not compromising when it comes to it. So, we can take that as a lesson on the power people actually do have, the power that we have as individuals, but also the power that we have as a community. We are the ones that shape our community. We just need to be brave enough to advocate for that change,
I see change happening too, kind of
organically
as people.
So who's talking right now? I apologize.
Irene.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just heard someone else at the same time, so I was confused.
So I see things happening organically too, as younger people, like people who are younger, they eat differently than I did growing up, or even now, like soda kind of. It's still around, but I see a lot of people drinking less of it. Sometimes when I walk around and I look at the restaurants, and you see like all the like acai bowl or the poke bowl, like just the food has changed too, like where McDonald's isn't as busy as it used to be. So I think and maybe that's just me, like anecdotal, but I feel like change happens slowly as well, and not to lose heart that people are moving towards eating better. I hope.
And that's the thing that we can only hope for, that progressive change of moving towards, less processed, unhealthy food to more natural foods that are going to be better for us in the long run, and that's going to happen naturally through, the change of generation. The younger people are getting a little bit smarter than us when it comes to, taking care of each other, taking care of their environment, taking care of their nutritional needs, So that's a very good observation, Elaine. I see, Louise, that you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that it hasn't been brought up too much so far. An angle here that fits into all of these areas of how to influence has to do with green energy, and that is to look at, you know, when we buy things in the store versus having our own organic food grown in our yards, the packaging and the packaging, all of this plastic, for example, is hugely wasteful. And then there's this whole thing about, you know, how does it get, how does it decompose? You know, how does it get gotten rid of? And it's, you know, all over the oceans and so forth. And then the other thing is transportation and, you know, climate control. We are directly influencing climate control.
Mhm.
Even if it's like, if you think about hundreds of thousands of people doing this, that there will be less trucking, there will be less trips to the store, less gas, you know, and fume emissions and so forth. And there's been a lot of talk about how the individual drivers, you know, our cars create emissions. And so they say buy local creates less waste, less packaging, you know, if you grow local, for example. So all of that, there's a whole other angle here that is going to be a great benefit to growing organically, you know, individually or as families.
Mhm. Mhm. That's a good point, Louise. Thank you. Rosa, I see that you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I also feel that, you know, by sharing our membership, you know, to La Mesa Verde with friends and just people that we know, it will help to grow the group of local gardeners that grow our own fruits and vegetables, and that way we can influence huge organizations, and by consuming our own organic vegetables. For example, a few minutes ago I had to answer a phone call, and I had to exit the meeting, and it was my friend, and she goes, "What are you doing?" And then I explained. She goes, "How do you join? Just in person?" I said, "Well, I actually send an email, and you know, then I signed up." So that made me think about how important it is to, you know, share this awesome program with friends, and by doing it, you know, grow the group of gardeners, and you know, really make an influence.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, we have a lot of influence impacting both individual lives, our friends and families, but also, you know, the greater society as well. So we just have to remember that, and we need to own that, you know. So, um, was there anything else anyone had to say? Any other comments? Any questions?
I want to read Sabrina's message in the chat. She said, "We're also learning how to respect how hard farmers work to provide us with food."
Mhm.
That is very true. I think once you grow your own food, you really, well, if you didn't already, really like understand how much work and care goes into it and feel more connected to your food.
And these workers, these farmers, they deserve those protections like we do. You know, regardless if you're a farmer or you're a doctor, we should be valuing these people who are the essential workers, the building block of our society, because we could not exist as a larger society without these workers. And you know, it's a very humbling finally growing your own food in your own backyard, because it is hard work. It is doable though. And you know, the beautiful thing about La Mesa Verde, at least when I joined back in 2017, is I saw in person, like, you know, how hard it is to grow your own food, but at the same time, how much freedom and how much power my family regained when it came to accessing this food. Because before this program, um, you know, my personal family has a huge history of diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and the main reason why I joined this program is to change the eating habits of my family. And through the garden, I was able to connect more with my family, really talk about the health issues that are impacting our family as well, and use that as an example to new families coming in, that there is this change that happens when you grow food in this program, and there's a lot of influence, a lot of power in that. Even if it only seems like it's within your own family, it's more far-reaching than you think. Sharing these stories about how lifestyles have changed and how much quality of life has improved. And it comes to questions like, why are we letting these policymakers, these larger corporations, make the decisions for us? We are transforming the food system individually within our own households, but we have to constantly think, what can we do to make sure we remain in control when it comes to the food that we eat? Okay. Dale, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, actually, I want to comment on what you just talked about. It seems to be the case just about with every decision in this country where it's a top down. And so with La Mesa Verde, and other organizations, we can all start a groundswell from the bottom up. That's what I hope will happen. But from what I've seen in my life, it usually doesn't happen until there's like some sort of major problem that arises. So just hope and pray that people in the government will start listening to this groundswell.
Thank you for commenting, Dale. I appreciate it. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, I am checking in with the Spanish group right now. What's going to happen is that we're all going to come back in one group and finish up. Riley is going to talk a little bit more about build committee and the build season, installation season, and then we're going to finish off with some announcements of things that are happening in the program and happening in our community. So give me one moment. If you guys want to talk a little bit more about what was covered today, whether it was the gardening workshop or the food system workshop, feel free to. I encourage all of you to have that discussion. I just want to make sure the other group is on time as well. So how about this? I'm going to put out this question. So who here feels like, as a consumer, as a gardener, that you do not have as much power as you wish you did?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Do you feel like that, Joel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I feel like I need to have some land that would be a co-op farm, like so a group of people could together afford a piece of land that they would have a cooperative venture on.
And that's the thing, like, you have to question also, like, who exactly has access to land in this area? Often it's people who bought this land years ago when it was more affordable. It's the corporations that own this land as well. Like, one of the big things that La Mesa Verde talks about is land access for agriculture, for farming, for producing locally grown food. It's weird here in Silicon Valley because, we used to be known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. It used to be nothing but orchards here. Canning was a huge industry. Orchard farming was a huge industry, and it's changed so much since then. All the agriculture stuff moved down towards the south through Morgan Hill to Gilroy, and we became more of an urban city here in San Jose. And land access is a huge issue. There is land available to here, right? But are there enough incentives for people like you or me to actually have access to land and grow food for ourselves? You know, if you guys are interested in discussing topics like that a little bit more, one committee I would recommend all of you checking out, and if you wanted more information on it, is the Garden Access Committee. They specifically work on issues like this in San Jose when it comes to improving access to land and a farmable land for our members and just individuals in our community that don't directly benefit, you know, whether they're homeless, whether they're low income, whether they just don't have the resources to have land to grow food for their family, you know. So Garden Access is a huge committee that always talks about this particular topic. If you guys want more information on them, we are trying to plan another meeting soon. Probably in the beginning of next month, I believe. So if you want to talk a little bit more about the laws and policies that are happening in this area, specifically in San Jose or Santa Clara County, please contact Riley or myself, and we can get you connected with that committee. You know, they have a huge role in the policy work that we get involved in here in La Mesa Verde. Dale, did you have another question?
Yeah, I had a comment for the gentleman who was talking about, you know, what kind of farm to start. I've been reading this book recently. It's No-Till Gardening, Organic Gardening. And it's a really interesting read because it's about this guy's venture in developing his no-till farm. And it's a really cool book. I recommend everyone read it.
Thank you for that,
Is
Dale.
that Dale? Is that Chris Trump's book?
Dale, did you hear that? I don't know where Dale is.
He's muted.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This book I have is called, his name is Daniel Mays, like the month of May.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Got it on Amazon, really cheap. It's a good book.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Thank you everyone for sharing resources in the chat. I'm writing down all these movies. I'm excited to dive into them. So thank you all. It's really important to share resources.
All right, so the other room is just joining us right now. Thank you everyone for participating. I really appreciate it. Fernando, you look all hyped up. If you had a good discussion like our group had.
Sí, tuvimos una muy buena. Yeah, we have an incredible workshop.
It was really good.
And gardening. En los dos fue un muy buen taller.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up the slide, the end slide with your information, Riley, and also the announcement stuff. So give me 1 second.
So Carlos va a compartir su pantalla para poder ver la última información, que son los anuncios, y también Riley está reclutando personas para construir sus camas de jardín.
Okay. Let me go all the way down. Oh, you put it. Okay, I can see it. All right. Let me share my screen.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go over the announcements real quick. So there are a couple of things happening in our community right now and within our organization as well. So Sacred Heart's VITA program is helping with tax preparation at the moment. So if you are considered low income, you may be eligible for free tax preparation with this program. If you are interested and want to make an appointment, we recommend sending an email to taxhelp@sacredheartcs.org. They will get in contact with you within 3 days of actually sending that email and hopefully set you up with an appointment. They are doing it online as well as in person. It just depends on the circumstance and what you're comfortable with. So please follow up with them if you need help preparing your taxes for this season.
Entonces, give me a second. Vaira es un programa que tenemos en el Sagrado Corazón, no corazón, para ayudar a las personas a hacer su declaración de impuestos. A veces es muy complicado hacer la declaración de impuestos y aquí en Sagrado Corazón tenemos un programa que ayuda a hacer esa declaración. Entonces nuestra recomendación es escribir un correo electrónico, lo puedes escribir en español, a esa dirección que está acá, que es taxhelp@sacredheartcs.org, y en 3 días aproximadamente le van a responder para darle una hora. Le van a dar una hora para tener una cita, y usted va a venir en su auto y en el estacionamiento del Sagrado Corazón lo van a atender para ver su declaración de impuestos. Es un programa súper bueno, súper amigable, está en todos los idiomas, así que son bienvenidos a poder hacer esto con nosotros en Sagrado Corazón. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay, so next we want to make the announcement that we are actually changing our spring planting distribution date. Originally, I believe it was on April 18th. On the calendar that we sent out to all of you, but we will be moving it 1 weekend later on April 24th in 2021. So I just want you guys to make sure you mark that in your calendars. That's when you're going to be receiving all your seeds and the seedlings to plant out in your garden. It's going to be a drive-through event. But I hope you guys are excited. That's when we're going to be able to plant everything and start the new season. So remember, April 24th is the day that we're going to be doing it. That's a Saturday.
Entonces, algo que necesitamos que pongan en sus calendarios es que el 24 de abril va a ser la distribución de plantas. Ya, la distribución de las plantitas y las semillas para la temporada de primavera. En el calendario que le dimos a ustedes, en un principio decía abril 17, pero necesitábamos moverlo una semana adelante, ya, para poder tener todas las plantas en buena forma. Entonces, para que pongan en su calendario ahorita que la distribución de plantas de la primavera va a ser el sábado 24 de abril, a través del estacionamiento de Sagrado Corazón. Cada familia va a recibir un horario para venir a recoger sus plantitas, y vamos a tener en el tiempo, yo creo que cada uno va a recibir un horario. Vamos a llamar a todas las familias para decirle a qué hora tienen que recogerla, ¿ya? Y si es que no pueden esa hora, vamos a ser flexibles y darle otra alternativa, no se preocupen.
Fernando, perdón, disculpa que te interrumpa. ¿Qué día dijiste? ¿24 de febrero?
24 de abril.
Oh, perdón.
24
Gracias.
de abril vamos a empezar yo diría a las 9 de la mañana hasta las 3 de la tarde. Pero cada familia va a tener un horario para recogerla. Coge, Carlos.
Before we continue with the last announcement, Riley, I just realized that we did not send the survey for the food justice portion. I just want to let you all know there is a survey for the food justice workshop that we will be sending all to you via email. That way you can follow up with that evaluation. I apologize. I know we're going out of order today, but you will be getting a survey to fill out for that part of the presentation. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So Riley, we don't send that? I think I thought you all send that.
I don't think we actually mentioned it at the end of the food justice one. So we did the gardening one, but we didn't do the food justice one, I believe.
Yes. So I just sent that in the chat right now. We're gonna finish announcements really quickly, but then and then we can attach that in an email as well for the folks who have to leave early.
Okay.
Entonces, give me a second. Para los que hablamos español, nosotros hicimos nuestra tarea. Nosotros llenamos la encuesta de justicia alimentaria. Entonces en el chat lo que Riley acaba de poner es solo para los que hablan en inglés, ¿ya? Así que no se preocupe, los que estamos en español estamos 100%. No la tienen que llenar de nuevo. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay, So we're going to continue with our last announcement. So I just wanted to talk about a ally organization here in the Bay Area called Fresh Approach. They will be starting their mobile farmer markets. They sell produce out of a food truck, basically, starting after February 23rd. There's going to be a location in San Jose on Tuesdays and a location in Sunnyvale on Thursdays. What we did is we did share this through our social media pages, both in the Facebook group, Facebook fan page, as well as on Instagram if you want to look closely at the flyer and the details there. But if you also want more information on this mobile farmers market, there is a phone number here that you can call. It's 925-771-2990, or you can contact the Fresh Approach through email, programs@freshapproach.org.
Entonces, tenemos una organización que es amiga de la Mesa Verde, que se llama Fresh Approach, que ellos lo que tienen son distintos camiones con productos de agricultores locales, ¿ya? Pequeños agricultores que venden sus productos en estos camiones y van rotando en distintos lugares de la ciudad. Entonces, si estás interesado en saber dónde va a estar ese camión con productos, me refiero a vegetales, ¿no? A vegetales frescos, uno puede puede llamar a ese número que está ahí en la pantalla, el 925-771-2990, o también uno puede enviar un correo electrónico a programs@freshapproach.org y ahí preguntar dónde va a estar el camión en la ciudad. Son pequeños agricultores quienes están haciendo esto, por lo tanto es una forma de ser solidario con los agricultores pequeños y no seguir promoviendo la agricultura a gran escala, como ya lo mencionamos, con sus efectos negativos. Okay.
Now I want to open up the floor to anyone who may have announcements of anything that's maybe coming up. Does any members have an announcement they want to make?
¿Alguien tiene algún otro anuncio que quiera compartir con nosotros acá? ¿Algún evento que nos quiera invitar? Puede sacarse el mudo y hablar. Este es el momento.
Okay, it doesn't look like anyone's going to say anything. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the other part of the presentation. Riley is going to talk. Oh, actually, Sean, you just raised your hand. Go ahead.
Hi. I've mentioned it before, but to get more specific, if anybody's interested in driving up donations that I pick up during the month, if anybody's interested in driving up to support farm workers in Santa Cruz County, Center for Farm Working Families. And then once a month, we have there's a distribution events at a secret location, moves around. Folks can get a hold of me or contact Center for Farm Working Families and can mention my name and get in contact, and I'll give you my phone number and all that sort of stuff.
Thank you, Sean.
So, lo que Sean nos estaba compartiendo, le voy a hacer una pregunta primero. Sean, what type of donation? What kind of donation?
I use mostly the Nextdoor app. I drive around and I pick up stuff for kids and babies, nursing supplies. That's pretty good. Second Harvest Food Bank is already there. Bringing some food and big cases of fruits and vegetables. And then always stuff for babies and household stuff is there. But certainly, more of that's a good idea. But if you contact the Center for Farm Working Families, Dr. Lopez would tell you what's good to bring. I use these apps so that I can drive around in the valley here and get, just everybody's got really good stuff. So, that's the thing that I can do since I don't have money to support, right? With, I can drive up with a few $1,000s worth of supplies that only cost me a little bit of gas money. And, when we're done, the farmer's market and the plaza in Watsonville is open. You know, I might stop by a farm on my way out, depending on the season. It's a beautiful location, and people in Watsonville are always really nice.
God.
So you know, afterward, there's a real plus to being in the area. So it really makes even the trip worthwhile.
Thank you, Sean. So, lo que Sean compartió acá es que existe la posibilidad de poder apoyar a las familias que trabajan en el campo, en el Central Valley. Hay una organización que está recibiendo donaciones. Puede ser en dinero, también puede ser en ropa o puede ser en pañales, principalmente cosas para bebés y para niños, para quienes están en situación de farmer workers, significa trabajadores del campo, campesinos que están en una situación bastante difícil ahora. Y vamos a tratar de enviar por correo electrónico mayor información para contactar a esa organización a quienes estén interesados. Sabrina, did you raise your hand?
I was writing my message on chat, but I am an ESL instructor. So to anybody who wants to learn English in this panel, it's for free. It's a free program. If they want to call my school, I will be very happy to help anyone. That's all I can offer. So I'm gonna write the phone number, and I'm writing my message in Spanish because mostly there are a lot of Hispanic speakings here, but I don't know Mr. Trong also, I think, might benefit. So maybe I can also write it in English. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Gracias, Sabrina. Bueno, para los que captaron algo, Sabrina es profesora de inglés y va a compartir en el chat el contacto de algunas clases que ella está haciendo para personas que quieren aprender o mejorar su inglés, ¿ya? También Sean compartió en el chat la página web de la organización que está recibiendo las donaciones. Así que hartos recursos para la comunidad, harta buena información y contacto. Estoy muy contento de que podamos. So, Sabrina, does this have any cost?
Excuse me?
Is there any cost for this?
No, it's totally free. It's a we get funding from the government, and of course we all ask students to attend classes, but it's for free. Even the books are free. All they have to do is call to register.
Ajá. Entonces son clases gratis. Sabrina puso en el chat el número de teléfono para que se puedan registrar los que están interesados en mejorar o aprender inglés de forma gratuita. Thank you, Sabrina. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I need to respond to one thing that was asked during the chat. So I know a lot of people are wondering when their beds are going to be installed with their soil. So for all those folks who actually received their regular sized garden beds last Saturday, Riley will be contacting you soon about installation times to deliver and put in your soil and install your irrigation system. She'll be contacting you soon. Also, if you have beds, specifically ADA beds, we will be actually building the beds directly at your household, including doing the soil delivery. So please be patient with us. We're still trying to figure out the scheduling for everything. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood what was going on with installation season. Okay, there you go.
Lo que Carlos compartía es que algunos preguntaban acá, bueno, ¿y cuándo me van a venir a instalar mi cama? Estamos llamando y Riley está a cargo de llamar a las personas para poder coordinar un día y una hora, ¿ya? Para que vayamos a instalar la cama y dejarle la tierra. Tenemos por lo menos 2 semanas y media o 3 semanas para hacer esto para todos los nuevos miembros, así que tengan paciencia, vamos a estar contactándolos. Y para quienes necesitaban las camas altas, que son para personas con alguna discapacidad, a esas personas vamos a ir a instalarle la cama a su hogar, vamos a ir a construir la cama en su hogar y además llevar la tierra. Así, les pedimos disculpas si es que nos descoordinamos el día de la distribución y les dijimos que la íbamos a entregar. Pero solo pudimos entregar las que eran las camas bajas, ¿no? De solo 2 tablas. Pero sí o sí todos la van a recibir, sí o sí todos van a recibir su tierra. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and is there any other announcements? I think that was it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next part of the presentation. Riley's going to talk about build season and installation season. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to Riley.
Awesome. Thank you. So first of all, yeah, I just want to everyone.
Oh, 1 second.
Bless you.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Riley.
Thank you. I just want to, first of all, yeah, like Carla said, thank everyone for your patience while we are getting all these installations coordinated. Hopefully, if you are able and interested and want to volunteer, you'll see kind of the other side of the process and understand why it's so time consuming and drawn out. But it's also a really good way to keep your get your hands dirty, keep your hands busy, and kind of get involved before you may be receiving your own bed installation.
I also want to mention, we did talk about earlier in the year for the first year members, we are asking you to do 15 hours of volunteer service. Build season and installation season is a perfect way to get a lot of those hours. So, if you're really interested in getting involved and really helping build, put in these beds for families, other first year families, please consider going to this volunteer opportunity.
Yeah, I want to pause for translation before I get more into it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Entonces, esta es la invitación que Riley está haciendo. La próxima semana vamos a tener estas fechas. El lunes a las 10 de la mañana vamos a estar instalando una cama grande, de esas que son para personas con discapacidad. El martes vamos a estar instalando a las 10 de la mañana o a las 3:30 de la tarde. El miércoles de la próxima semana a las 10 de la mañana vamos a instalar. El jueves vamos a estar a las 10 de la mañana y a las 3 de la tarde. Y el viernes a las 2 de la tarde. Así que quienes quieran ser voluntarios, por favor, contacten a Riley, contacten a Carlos o a mí. No hay ningún problema. Y las horas que van a estar haciendo esto son consideradas horas de voluntariado, ¿ya? Y eso ayuda a que uno tenga las 15 horas de voluntariado al fin del año. Esa es una manera de participar. Van a haber otras, no se preocupen. Así que si tienen tiempo y ganas de construir, instalar con nosotros, anótense, mándennos un mensaje de texto o un email o llamarnos y podemos construir la próxima semana. Go ahead, Riley, please.
Awesome, thank you. So I just want to share a little bit more about what these installations entail. So there'll be volunteer shifts. Each shift is about 1 to 3 hours, depending on how many volunteers we have and how many beds there are to install. You'll see that obviously just doing one bed takes a lot less time than doing 2 or 3. So yeah, we're aiming for having about 3 to 5 volunteers per installation to get the work done quickly, but also maintain social distancing. So if you have a friend you want to bring, if you want to pull your kids out of Zoom class for an afternoon to get outside, if maybe your child is interested or needing some volunteer hours or anyone you may know, please just refer them to me. I'm going to put my phone number and email in the chat right now so you can refer them to me. But it's a really great way to get outside, meet some other first year gardeners. If you're a first year member yourself, you can like see somebody else's space, see their garden, get to know them. And so these are, just to clarify, these are the installations for next week, this upcoming week, but we will be doing installations almost every day for the next 2 months almost. So if next week isn't great for you, please just share your contact info with me and I will keep you updated on each week's installations. And then if you're not interested in build committee or anything, this also applies to you. You will, I will confirm, or someone will confirm the date and time for your installation about a week or 2 prior. So if you're still waiting to hear from us, we haven't forgotten about you, just hang tight. And we're kind of doing a rolling schedule for all of these.
Entonces, lo que comentó Riley es que esto es solamente el calendario de la próxima semana. Todas las semanas vamos a tener oportunidades para instalar camas de jardín. Es una buena oportunidad para trabajar, para hacer las horas de voluntario y conocer otros miembros de la Mesa Verde. Así que si están interesados, por favor, contáctense con nosotros. vamos a estar las próximas, yo diría, 4 o 5 semanas haciendo esto, y necesitamos más manos. Por lo tanto, si tiene un tiempecito algún día en la semana, día en la mañana o en la tarde, contáctese con nosotros y le vamos a decir dónde y cuándo puede participar.
And to answer Moria's question in the chat, she asked, are these times correct for future or weeks? I'll say more or less. I think we're trying to do installation in the morning, one in the afternoon for most days. You all, the first year members who are receiving these installations. So I'd say like vaguely there'll be a 10 a.m. and a 3 p.m. almost every day, but that's not confirmed.
It looks like Mary Ann has a question for Riley.
Oh, sorry. Is it in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat. She's asking, will installation start next week, March 1st?
Oh, yes. Yes. Next week, as in, what is next week? Oh my gosh.
No,
yeah.
we're actually starting installations before that. So we actually started this week, but we're going to be continuing installations past March 1st.
Claro que sí. Entonces nos preguntaban, bueno, ya, ¿cuándo ¿cuándo empiezan todo esto? ¿El 1 de marzo? ¿Cuándo? Nosotros empezamos la semana pasada a construir. Si nos ven en social media, ya habíamos construido un par de camas de jardín. Y estos horarios no van a ser siempre los mismos, ya vamos a tener algunas otras alternativas. No es siempre todos los lunes a las 10, no. Esto va a ir cambiando semana por semana dependiendo de la disponibilidad de las familias, ¿no? Si una familia no me puede recibir un día el lunes a las 10, lo vamos a hacer a las 12 o a las 3. Va a siempre depender de la disponibilidad de la familia que nos recibe. Okay?
So I think, yeah, just in closing, please contact me or indicate on the survey that we sent out earlier that you are interested. Even if you want to just do one installation, if you want to do one a week, if you want to have a standing date, that would be great. Just whatever you're able, even if you're just a little bit interested, please just get in touch with me.
Okay, I'm gonna go into the next slide. Okay, there you go.
Okay, and then if you're super interested, then I would love to invite you to the Build Lead training. I noticed some of you already said that you were wanting to attend on the survey that we sent out, so I'll be following up with you. But just to officially give this information, our Build Lead training will be Wednesday, February 24th at 4 p.m. It'll be at Sabrina Irvin's house, one of our lovely first-year members who has so graciously offered her yard for us. So I didn't want to blast her address out to everyone. So if you are interested, please contact me, or I will contact you if you already said you're interested on the survey, to share that address. And at this training, you will learn how to do the installation, just filling it with soil, how to do the irrigation lines, everything like that. And then you'll also learn some like volunteer management, leadership skills. So you'll be totally prepared to lead your own team of volunteers with plenty of staff support, of course. But after this training, you'll be equipped to lead your own team of volunteers and start getting really involved with Build Committee. So I would love to invite everyone to this. No prior experience necessary. If you've never picked up a drill, that's cool. And if you've been doing this for years and years and years, please come help me out, support me.
Entonces, esto es algo que conversamos cuando estábamos llenando la encuesta, los que hablamos en español, era esta oportunidad de convertirse en un líder de construcción, y el entrenamiento que va a haber para eso es el 24 de febrero, día miércoles, en la casa de uno de nuestros miembros. Ahí vamos a aprender, por supuesto, a instalar la cama, pero por sobre todo a manejar voluntarios, y yo le expliqué en ese momento, ¿no? Así que por favor, si tienen tiempo y quieren convertirse en líderes de construcción, contacten a Riley y van a poder saber dónde va a ser esto el 14 de febrero, que es el próximo miércoles a las 4 de la tarde. Muchísimas gracias.
Yes, and just to clarify, this is an in-person event, so depending on how many people are interested, I can't really gauge that yet, but we will try to keep the numbers limited, but it is in person.
Y este entrenamiento es en persona, ¿ya? Así que para que se den cuenta que el miércoles 24 de febrero a las 4 de la tarde habría que estar en persona en un lugar y vamos a estar en la casa de alguien, por lo tanto, para tener todas las precauciones.
And one last thing before we move on, we especially need help for this upcoming week. I know some of you have already volunteered, some of you have already reached out to, but especially for the installations on Monday and Tuesday, we haven't had volunteers sign up for those yet. So if you are free Monday morning or anytime on Tuesday, the need is high for there. So please let me know.
Y como lo que le estamos pidiendo es que por favor sí o sí necesitamos personas para este lunes, martes y miércoles. Ya sé que algunos de ustedes ya han sido voluntarios, pero estamos un poco bajos de voluntarios para la próxima semana. Así que si es que pueden hacer un esfuerzo, lo agradeceríamos.
Una pregunta, Fernando y Riley. Hoy no van a ocupar ayuda, yo puedo los sábados nomás.
So Monica is asking if we don't need help today because she only can participate as a volunteer on Saturdays.
So just to clarify on that, we are planning on doing some community installations at either local schools or other community gardens. More likely, that's going to end up happening on a Saturday sometime in the near future. So if you're only able to volunteer on the weekends, we can definitely arrange it so that you can volunteer during those installations.
So, durante esta semana no vamos a tener nada los fines de semana, pero más adelante sí o sí vamos a tener que hacer algunos días de fin de semana. Por lo tanto, esa es vamos a tenerlos al contacto informados qué días de fin de semana vamos a tener este tipo de actividades.
Gracias.
De nada.
Suda, I see your hands up.
Yes, really, like, if we don't want to volunteer, like, in person, so what are the volunteering, like, opportunities that we are going to have in next couple of months? Like, that would be like, greatly appreciate.
Are you asking about remote, like not in person?
Yes, like, making calls or like, the Facebook, because the only thing is like, I'm really interested to come out, but because of the current situations, like, I just don't want to risk it at all. So like, maybe because of that, like, my kind of people, if anyone is there, like, you might have to, what is that, like, search for more like volunteering hours, the program sort of things, like, because I can, like, do anything like a social media, or like I can what is that, like prepare like flyers, like something kind of those kind of things, like, will be like, greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I do want to say to everybody, a lot of the build committee opportunities are in person, so just be aware of your own safe. And then Sudha, we will you to I can none for build season that are coming to mind at this moment, but we'll be in touch.
So Riley, we lost a lot of that. You were freezing and lagging a little bit. So I just wanted to say, Sudha, thank you for bringing up the ideas of how people can actually participate in the program. We're always looking for creative ways to add additional volunteer opportunities for folks. So if you are interested in the social helping us with social media campaigns, making flyers, or making phone calls, we'll definitely follow up with you on that. Like Riley was saying, all the build season stuff is usually in person. So keep that in mind when it comes to volunteering for any of these opportunities.
Thank you, Carlo.
So it looks like we're at the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for staying 7 minutes over time. I appreciate it. This workshop was really fun to lead, and I hope everyone here learned a little bit about food systems and also some gardening information. So just like I said before, we will be sending an email with a copy of the presentations in case you want to review it again. We will also send you an email with both links to the surveys that we're asking all of you to fill out so you can review the workshops. But I want to thank everyone again. I hope everyone has a good Saturday. And thank you. Fernando's going to finish.
We have one more person.
Oh, go ahead.
Who is in the phone? Your phone finish 362.
3362. Is that
El que está
Pat?
El que está en el teléfono y estaba levantando su mano y su número de teléfono termina en 3362. ¿Puedes hablar?
Is that Pat or is that Joel?
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you what your number is again. I have two Carloses in my phone thing, and I don't know which is which.
Okay, Joel, I'll text you the one that's the most recent one, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a different Carlos, the other one.
Ok, nos vemos entonces. Muchas gracias por participar del taller. Les robamos 9 minutos extra. No estamos viendo, si no es en su casa para instalar la cama de jardín, nos vamos a estar viendo en los otros eventos que tengamos. No se preocupen que para ser voluntario van a haber más oportunidades. Si no es en persona, también van a ser oportunidades para ser virtuales. Que estén muy bien, muchas gracias. Y estamos en contacto. Gracias por participar. Thank you, everyone.
Gracias por todo. Que tengan buena.
All right.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you. Bye.
Adios.
Nos vemos. So we need to stop sharing in Facebook, please.
Bye, Toy. We'll send you that email soon, okay?
Yes. Yes, I will text a message to you. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye.